Hey guys, Cody Adair here. I'm with Jason Merkel, and today we have the brand new E-flite Air Tractor 1.5 meter on the table to discuss with you guys some of the latest and greatest and coolest features that we have with this airplane.
Yeah, so this we just announced yesterday, so we also did promote this a little bit earlier. So by the way, guys, Cody is live on our Facebook page right now. He's going to share this out to some of our other social pages. So if you see him on his computer or on his phone, he's just monitoring comments there. We want to make sure we answer all the questions that you guys might have. If there's anything that you're very curious about, why we did something a certain way, so on and so forth, be thinking about that right now. We'll cover a lot of probably your questions through our discussion, and then we'll come back at the end to try and recap to make sure that we didn't miss anything in particular. And so you may be seeing this later on YouTube. Of course, it won't be live at that point, but you can also leave your questions, comments in the comments section on YouTube as well, and we'll address those a little later on in addition to the live discussion here. So yes, it is the Air Tractor 1.5 meter. As you guys can see, pretty clear, good sized airplane. A 1.5 meter span is somewhat common for like what I'd consider mid-size models these days. A lot of guys are familiar with this size from it. Let's say you learn to fly on an Apprentice, that's a 1.5 meter airplane. If you own a regular Timber or a Turbo Timber, those are 1.5 meter wingspan airplanes as well. This fits right in that family, right in that class of model. What's great about it is then it uses the most popular batteries that most guys already have. So everything from a 3S 2200 all the way up to say a 4S 3200. Honestly, you could probably fly with an even smaller battery, an even bigger battery, as long as you mind your CG, of course. The power system that's in there is designed to be 3S and 4S compatible right out of the box. So basically, it's the guts, so to speak, the motor, ESC, the servos, for the most part, out of a Turbo Timber 1.5 meter.
Very cool.
And what I like in this airplane too, obviously, it's a scale subject matter, and so it is intended to look as much like the Air Tractor as possible, but I would say it's the equivalent to a low-wing timber. So, sometimes guys use that term limber for low-wing timber when we're joking around, but the idea being that it handles a lot like a high-wing timber, but kind of in a low-wing platform. Obviously, low-wing aircraft handle a little bit differently. You've got the weight above the wing, and it isn't as, say, stable per se, but at the same time, it has phenomenal flying characteristics. It has STOL takeoff capability, landing capability, much like a Turbo Timber does or original Timber 1.5 does. And then at the same time, it's a little more aerobatic. It can do some really cool stuff, actually. You guys might notice in our launch video in particular, we show some really cool kind of snap maneuvers where it kind of tumbles a little bit end over end. It really is awesome what it can do. And it's in part because of the aerodynamics of the airframe. And then, of course, how much power we've got in there, especially with the 4S setup. It has unbelievable amounts of power. So yeah, it's a really exciting airplane for me because I think it's the perfect first low-wing airplane for a lot of guys, or the perfect kind of first scale airplane. Many people are going to start with very popular, let's say, Hobby Zone Aero Scout or a Mini Apprentice, maybe the E-flite Apprentice or the Hobby Zone Carbon Cub S+. You can start with those. High wing trainers, phenomenal planes to start with. So guys, this is not a trainer airplane. This is not for someone who's never flown an airplane before. We don't recommend this. This is a great, though, second airplane or first low wing airplane. So you learn to fly on one of those high wing trainers. I think a lot of guys would then make the kind of natural progression from one of those models to something like the Turbo Timber, for example. And then this is a great either third airplane. Could, again, still potentially be your second airframe or your airplane, because we do offer it in a Bind and Fly basic version with AS3X and then the optional use Safe Select. And of course, Safe Select is like what a lot of our trainers have for beginner mode. So hopefully we got quite a few guys on.
Yeah, we actually do. We actually have quite a few comments already. Adam actually wanted to know if he's flown the original Timber. Is this a good second airplane? I would say so.
Perfect.
Sure.
Absolutely perfect. This is it, guys. This is kind of it. If we were to draw a map to kind of give you guys the path to take from your first airplane all the way kind of moving up to your first low-wing airplane, it's your trainer, some of the ones I mentioned, your Turbo Timber. If you've mastered and enjoy your Turbo Timber, you're absolutely going to love flying this airplane. It is, again, a little bit more capable, in part because it's a low-wing aircraft, but at the same time, it has a lot of the phenomenal handling characteristics of the Timber. It doesn't have any bad habits. It doesn't snap. It doesn't do anything strange or unexpected if you get it real slow. And you do obviously have the functional flaps you guys can see there, which improve the slow speed performance as well.
Very cool.
But it is, again, just kind of like flying a Timber with the wing on the bottom.
Yeah, that's very cool, guys.
Yes.
So talking about assembly, Jason, how long are we taking generally to get out of the box and ready to go to the field.
So it is very similar to the Turbo Timber in that regard. You know, you'll hear us reference that a lot because, again, that was kind of the inspiration to give us this class of model. And so assembly is pretty much the same as that. Bolt on the stab, you have a two-piece wing. Now this is not a two-piece wing that slides together as one piece and then bolts on the fuselage. That was how we did it with the original Timber and then the Turbo Timber. It is a two-piece plug-in wing. The fuselage, of course, has the wing kind of pockets in it. And so if you're familiar with, say, our Cherokee or our Cirrus 1.5 meter, those airplanes have the kind of slide-in two-piece wing panels, and then there's just two bolts in the bottom.
Right.
So we do have the hands-free servo connections in there, which is nice. So if you do have to take the wings on and off, it's just those two bolts. You pop it apart. You don't have to mess with any servo connections, none of that. It's super simple. You slide it in, and then you just put the bolts in and go. I don't think a lot of people are going to have to take it apart to transport it, but if you do, it's not terribly inconvenient. And then you have to bolt on the landing gear, install the prop. You're ready to fly. I'd say most people, 30 minutes to an hour.
Sure. I think one of the cool features is the horizontal stabilizer on this one, guys. It actually has the clip-on horizontal stabilizer.
Oh, yes,
yeah. So this one doesn't use screws at all. So if you guys are familiar with the EC1500, it's kind of very similar to that. It actually just clips in place, and then you actually want to just bolt up the horizontal stabilizer struts, which is really cool.
Yep, just a couple screws on that, and that's it. So not a ton of screws to put it together. No glue.
Right.
That's important. No glue at all required to assemble this model. Some of our models, every once in a while, there's certain things we can't get away from having to glue. But the nice thing about this airplane is there's nothing that you have to glue on it at all. So you can buy it, have yourself basically a medium Phillips, and you can put it together and you're ready to go. Although I think you may need, some other sizes of Phillips potentially for different screws and so on and so forth. So yes, very easy to put together, and you guys can see good sized airplane. 1.5 meter being again kind of a somewhat common size now. I really, I love this yellow color.
It looks good. It does stand out in the sky pretty well.
Yes, it does. Visibility is phenomenal. In fact, for those that aren't familiar with this as subject matter, make sure you just Google Air Tractor, take a look at all of the uses that this aircraft is very, very capable in the full-scale world. Not only is it used for crop dusting, which is kind of its probably best known capability, but in addition to that, they do some firefighting with it. There's also some other really interesting things that you guys might see out there, including some warbird versions
of it. There's some military schemes
yeah,
absolutely.
It's pretty cool, the stuff that they've done with that. And a part of the reason they're able to do all those things with this airframe is just because of how well it handles overall. It's kind of built like a tank, a very utilitarian, almost SUV of airplanes in the full-scale world. And then scaled down in model form, and I'll say, looks are somewhat subjective. It's probably not the sexiest looking airplane, but boy, it works really darn well. You've got this basically big giant Hershey bar wing, which is a part of why it has really nice kind of wing loading, pretty low wing loading. Sure. It doesn't have any bad habits, and that actually makes it handle very, very well as an RC model as well. And then we have some of that kind of additional capability and versatility built into the RC model because we do have the ability to install the optional skis that you see here. We'll talk a little bit later about the optional floats as well. So you can fly it from all kinds of surfaces. Even the full scale, they take off and land in short distances and on surfaces that are a little bit unusual and not probably practical for other aircraft to take off and land on. Sure. This airplane's the same way. If you guys watch our video, you'll see it taking off and landing in grass, taking off landing on pavement, taking off and landing on some pretty rough gravel. Basically surfaces that a Timber would be fine, like a Turbo Timber would be great on that surface as well, but a lot of other models in this class would not be okay on those surfaces. So the nice thing is you're able to fly this in more places than other similar class models because it's got very robust landing gear. It's cool. Some guys had actually asked if the landing gear was similar to the Night Brave that we had some time ago. It's completely different design, guys. This is a very solid, aluminum, sturdy one-piece landing gear. It's not two pieces. It was specifically set up to be strong enough to handle this model, no problem, including with some pretty rough landings. Then on top of that, we actually have a really nice setup on the tail wheel. Not sure everybody's gonna be able to see that, but we've got springs on there to help kind of provide some shock absorption. So yes, the tail wheel is better. Everything about this model, it's a very, very different model than that airplane was in particular.
I don't even think the Brave Knight had treaded wheels. We used to have treaded wheels on here.
Yeah, that I don't even recall, but again, they're not even in the ballpark. We didn't even look at that one when we designed this one. Of course, we started basically with the full-scale Air Tractor drawings, and then we looked at the good old Turbo Timber, and we kind of came up with this size, this class, because we wanted it to reuse a lot of those same components. The power system in particular, some of the servos in particular, and it worked out, I think, just perfect because now you can have a model that gave you all the benefits of a Timber, but now in a low wing and a scale form as well.
So let's talk about battery. I see you got several batteries there.
Yeah.
What kind of batteries are we recommending? What kind of flight times are we getting?
So we officially recommend 3S 2200 up to a 4S 3200. So that said, I mentioned earlier, you could probably get away with like a 3-cell 1300 even if you wanted to, shoved all the way in the nose. As long as it's CGs, it'll probably fly fine. You might even be able to squeeze in a 4S 5000 to get some really long flight times. You have to move the battery back to make sure that it's not nose heavy. But when you use one of our recommended batteries, either the 2200 up to the 3200, just kind of flying it typical, the way I would fly it, we're seeing 10 plus minutes, no problem. If you guys check out the Flight Talk video, which on YouTube we'll link to that so you can see that. In that video, I flew for about 5 minutes, I think, and that was with the 4-cell 3200 that we've got here. I flew for about 5 minutes, then you, after that video, flew for about 5 minutes, so we had about 10 minutes. I took the battery home and charged it. It was half charged. So it had 50% remaining after almost 10 minutes of some aggressive flying and some slow flying.
Right.
Now again, that was with the 4-cell 3200, so I would not be surprised if some guys are going to get 15 to 20 minutes if they're using either a 3-cell or a 4-cell 3200. 2200s, yeah, okay, you're probably going to be closer to the 10-minute mark. But for guys like my dad who might just go out and cruise around at a low throttle setting, he'll probably easily get 20 minutes on the 3200 and probably even upwards of 15 minutes on the 2200
That's
as
very
well.
cool. That's very cool.
Great setup. And by the way, guys, even though it's 3S and 4S compatible, you don't need a 4S battery to enjoy it. On 3S, it has really good power.
It flies scale.
Yeah, it flies very scale.
On 3S, it flies scale.
In fact, it probably has more power to weight ratio than the full scale model does on 3 cells. And then on 4 cells, which is what we flew in the Flight Talk video, primarily because everybody always wants to see it on the hottest battery, the biggest battery. But also that day was particularly windy, about 10 to 15 mile per hour winds. And so we wanted to have the bit heavier battery in there, more powerful battery in there to handle that a little bit better. But that said, again, on 3 cells, it's a blast. If you have no 4-cell batteries, no problem. You will love it on 3 cells. But if you put a 4-cell in it, you'll probably fall in love with it even more because on 4 cells, unlimited vertical,
it's wild.
Straight up. The speed is pretty stellar considering the kind of model that it is.
I had to compare it to the Timber X a little bit. I mean, if you guys like the Timber X and the aggressiveness of that aircraft, this really kind of speaks to that a little bit on 4S. It's very cool.
It does have very, very good performance. Again, same power system as the Turbo Timber 1.5 meter, which is the same motor size category as the Timber X motor, just a different KV, the same KV that's in the Turbo Timber, so we can use that 3-blade prop along with the 50 amp ESC, and again, either the 3S or the 4S battery right out of the box. So yeah, phenomenal setup. You guys will notice also we've got the lights in there. We've got the landing lights in the nose. We've got the navigation lights, including the strobes on the wingtips. Basically, a lot of the same lights that are in the Turbo Timber and the Timber X as well, and very scale lighting. It looks phenomenal in the evening light in particular. I like having lights on airplanes, I gotta say. Even if I don't plan on flying it late in the evening, it's just nice, including here in the studio, just to have them turned on. It just looks really, really cool. Those are already wired in there for you. You don't have to do any connections or any of that. Of course, it runs off of the main flight battery. Doesn't pull hardly any current, and they just look amazing.
So this airplane flying over the crops at dusk, you'd probably have a hard time telling if it wasn't the real one.
Yes. Yeah, we were trying to shoot the video before they harvested all of the corn in the area. Unfortunately, the weather was really bad around harvest time this year, and so you'll see like 1 or 2 shots in the video where we are flying over some of the crops, but they're already ready to be harvested. But yes, it looks the part for sure. There's certain pictures that we have, I think, on our website as well, where you look at it and you're like, wow, is that the full scale or is that a model? It really, really looks the part. And something you guys probably can't see in the video is we have, unlike the Turbo Timber, which is basically just kind of a smooth finish because it's not a scale airplane, but in this model, just like a lot of our Warbirds and some of our other scale aircraft, we have panel lines, we have rivets, we've got different hatches and other elements that are included in the surface finish of this airplane. So it is considerably more scale than, say, a Timber, which is not a scale airplane, but even more scale detail than, say, our Maul, for those that are familiar with the Maul. It's more like the detail that we have in the Cherokee and the Cirrus in particular. Yeah, so
it's absolutely scale. It's modeled after a real air tractor. Even the gray forward portion of the fuselage is actually kind of modeled after a real one. Some people might ask why that particular part of the fuselage is gray. Do you want to enlighten them, Jason?
So I think on the full scale, I believe they leave this area mostly unpainted. It's almost like raw aluminum because they do tend to put, say, for example, whatever they're spraying into the tank here. And if they spill that, it probably would mess up the paint finish. So we somewhat modeled that. We didn't go with quite that kind of raw aluminum color that they had. We did go ahead and paint it gray. But yes, that is scale. Of course, the trim scheme that you see on this is probably, I'd say, the most iconic well-known trim scheme for this particular model. There's a lot of different variations of the Air Tractor, different models, 502, 502A, 802, so on and so forth, but a lot of them are still painted like this one, and probably because it's high visibility and at the same time it looks kind of nice.
I would agree 100%, absolutely.
Yellow is one of my personal favorite colors, so I always like yellow airplanes, but it's cool because it's easy to see in the sky.
Are you one of those guys that say if it's yellow it goes faster?
No.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
If it's yellow, it sells better.
Okay. All right, so going from the external features, let's go into the internal features. So this particular aircraft has a 637T in it. Is it smart capable?
So in the Bind and Fly Basic version, we do have the 637TA version receiver. So for those that aren't familiar with the 637, it's kind of like the next generation 636. So for many, many years now, we've had the AR636s out in a lot of our airplanes, and those receivers have AS3X and, most cases, optional use Safe Select technology. The 637 is next generation, has a different chipset in it. It has additional features and functionalities, including full range telemetry.
Sure.
So as far as you can control the airplane, you're getting telemetry back to you. Now that said, when you have a Smart ESC, you get additional data then. You get, for example, motor RPM, you get ESC temperature. If you use a smart battery, you get individual cell voltages. All of those things come through the Smart ESC to the 637, then and back to your transmitter. That said, this model doesn't have a Smart ESC. It has the same ESC that the Turbo Timber has in it for a number of reasons. Number one is it just works. We know it works, it's reliable. We've sold a ton of these guys, and these ESCs just keep kicking and they just keep ticking. So that's one thing to point out. It also keeps the cost down. Unfortunately, it's not free to get all the smart tech that's out there. So we will be selective. We're not gonna put smart technology in every airplane. Even though the receiver is kind of technically a smart receiver, we don't have the smart ESC in here to help keep the price down. You know, I think there are times when some of those features are nice to have, but you don't feel as necessary. A model like this might kind of qualify as that. You'll notice that we recently released our E-flite Mustang, the P51D Mustang 1.5 meter, which is a very high-end, very large-scale model, and we went ahead and put the smart technology in that because, you know, when you're flying a $500 airplane, it's beneficial to know if your battery drops a cell or if you're getting low on voltage or whatever it might be. That data that you're getting back to your transmitter is great, whereas it maybe not as critical in a sporty model like this, a little bit lower cost model like this. Now that said, you could drop in a Smart ESC and you'd have those features. So I would not be surprised to see if some guys do that.
Sure.
They might pick up the 60 amp ESC, drop it in there, the 80 amp ESC, whatever they kind of prefer. In this case, we've got a 50 amp in there at the moment, and it works just fine. So this power system, again, pulled right out of the timber. The receiver is new. Real quick, I will also mention on the receiver that the 637T is the kind of standard version. The TA version, which is what we're going to have in some of our Bind and Fly Basic models, it doesn't have all the same features as the T. The one big difference is it doesn't have the barometer, so it doesn't have the variometer. Right. Exactly. So that's not in the A versions. It also kind of helps keep the cost down, and plus that's not a feature that everybody needs to have in a lot of their models. It's probably something that a lot of guys that fly gliders in particular would be interested in, but of course this model isn't necessarily a glider, and you shouldn't be flying it over 400 feet anyway.
Right.
So that's a part of why the Bind and Fly Basic version has the 637TA receiver, but does not have a Smart ESC. And then on top of that, again, we do have AS3X in there and optional use Safe Select. So for those that are not familiar, Safe Select works a lot like Safe does on our trainer aircraft. When you have Safe Select turned on, the airplane has bank angle limits, so you can't roll it upside down. It'll stop, and then it has pitch angle limits, so you can't pitch up and nose down too much. Right. And that keeps you from getting upside down and into a crash. Also, when you let go of the aileron and elevator stick, it goes back to level. So it has self-leveling when you have that turned on. Now you can bind without that active. You do not have to use Safe Select if you don't want to. Right. You know, that said, even as an experienced pilot, I always bind with it on. I put it on a switch. That way I have the option to turn it on or off. So if I ever do something like fly through the sun, which you're not supposed to do, but you lose orientation because of that, or you know, maybe I want to hand it off to someone who has a little bit less experience or is a little uncomfortable flying this airplane for the first time, I can turn on Safe. They can get kind of a feel for it, and then we can flip that off, no problem. Right. So again, you don't have to use that. The Bind and Fly Basic version does have that as an option, and of course we do also sell a plug and play version, which is identical to the Bind and Fly Basic version. Both of them have the motor and the ESC installed. They have the 4 metal geared servos installed on the primary control surfaces, the standard servos on the flaps, all of that's standard. The difference between the Bind and Fly Basic and the plug and play is the plug and play has no receiver. So you're ready to plug and play with your preferred receiver. Right. So if you buy it as a plug and play, it's a 5-channel aircraft. If you buy it as a Bind and Fly Basic, it could be a 5 or a 6-channel aircraft. Of course, channel 5 is your, well, in this case, you would use channel 6 is your flaps. You could use it as channel 5 on a 5-channel transmitter as well. But if you want to use Safe Select and you want to turn it on and off, you're going to have to use a separate channel for that. So you're going to need at least a 6-channel radio with the Bind-and-Fly basic version to have functional flaps and the ability to turn Safe Select on and off. We use an 8-channel a lot of times around here because more and more of our aircraft, not this one in particular, but our Warbirds, for example, a lot of our EDF jets now have 6 channels with flaps and retracts, plus Safe Select on top of that. You really need a 7th channel to actuate that. So again, plug and play, you can get away with a 5-channel transmitter. Bind and fly, probably going to want a 6-channel transmitter so you can turn Safe Select on and off.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely, I agree 100%. Looks like we have another question. Does this model feature a slide-in battery tray?
No, it does not have the slide-in battery tray. So let me show you guys, this is really cool. So we took one of the scale features and elements here, and we actually use this as our latch. So I pull that forward, and the hatch is huge. And I love having, obviously, a top-mounted hatch is very convenient. Having a very large hatch is very, very convenient. Having a very positive latch is very convenient. And you guys will see in here, it's got a very large battery compartment, and it does not have the slide-in tray. It's just got the Velcro straps there. If you use we just got a 2-cell car battery in here for now just to power it up and keep the lights on while we're working on it here. But if you have a 3-cell 2200, you're gonna have the battery a little bit further up in the nose. If you've got a 4-cell 3200, you'll have a little bit further back. There is plenty of room in here to adjust the CG range with our recommended batteries.
I think battery trays come into play, guys, when you have a model that has a longer nose on it that you have difficulty reaching your hand into. Given that there's a ton of room in this fuselage, you really don't need to have that. So super easy to install battery.
Yeah, we typically will put those into airplanes like our Warbirds that have those very narrow fuselages with the battery needing to be almost way up behind the motor and the hatch having to be back where the cockpit is. So this does not have the tray. It just has the kind of the typical hard mounted tray glued into the fuselage with Velcro straps around it. And then if you want, you can add some hook and loop material on the bottom so the battery doesn't slide forward and backward. But it's great because it's super convenient hatch and there's plenty of room in there for all the batteries that we recommend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gregory wants to know, would we consider this a park flyer?
So it's somewhat dependent on a couple of conditions. Number one is your skill level is a part of it. Obviously, parks vary in size and shape. I would say I wouldn't fly it in smaller than a soccer field. And then also on top of that, you have to be very careful about the local regulations in your area, whether or not you can fly it at a park. But considering what we used to call park flyers back in the day, this would probably fall into that category. We don't use that terminology as much anymore for a variety of reasons. But in the end, I would say it could be flown at, say, a soccer field by a skilled enough pilot if you're allowed to fly in that area. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm not seeing much else here, guys. Again, we're taking all kinds of comments, so if you guys have anything specifically you'd like to know, go ahead and just flood the chat. We're happy to be here and talk to you guys and just answer anything you might have regarding this airplane. One thing I noticed we haven't talked about is the optional skis. So these are a really cool feature. Jason, want to go into it?
So these are specifically made for this model. We will be also offering these as kind of a generic set of skis that you can use for other models. The nice thing about these is they are sized for this category and class of aircraft. So about 1.5 meters, say 10 to 15 size airplane. You can use these. They've got springs to keep them from just kind of floating around. And a lot of times if you don't have a spring on it and or a string to keep the ski from bouncing around, when you come in for a landing, it might tip forward and get caught, and it might tip too far back and get caught. So the springs help to keep it level, as you guys can see there, and then we got a string here to keep it from going too far back the other way. And so this set of skis is somewhat scale-like. There aren't a lot of air tractors that have skis on them, but there are a lot of full-scale aircraft that have skis, and we kind of modeled it after that. And then it does have all the hardware included with the airplane and the ski set to mount these on here. If you buy these skis for use on other models, you may have to drill a hole in your landing gear to put the screw in to hold the string like this. So for example, if you have a Timber or Timber X, Turbo Timber 1.5 meter, you can probably use these skis. You're just gonna have to make a little hole there and put a screw through so you can secure the string in place. But these skis will be probably popular for use on a variety of models. They are EPO foam up on the top here, and then we've got some hard plastic reinforcement up on the front. And again, all the hardware is included, so it will mount right on the air tractor, and it'll also work on a lot of other airplanes as well. So we do, of course, include the landing gear with the oversized tires. And although the tires, we kind of cheated those a little bit, admittedly. We made them a little bigger than scale because we wanted you to be able to take off and land on those rough surfaces. So, guys are used to having Tundra tires now on, say, their timber. We wanted this to have similar capabilities. It's not quite as big of a tire as a turbo timber, but it's pretty darn close.
It's pretty capable.
It's very capable,
Absolutely.
yeah. If you guys watched the Flight Talk video we did the other day, that grass we were on is pretty thick, pretty nasty.
It was swampy
pretty clumpy.
too,
it was swampy. Yeah, and these wheels handled it no problem. In fact, this is the exact airplane we flew in that video the other day, so it's got some dirt still on the
I flooded
tire.
my shoe in a
Oh, that's
puddle
right, you
just
did.
to do that for you. So.
Yes. So Cody literally had to go buy a brand new pair of shoes after
Right
we shot that
afterwards.
video.
Yeah, it was good. It was
Sorry,
good.
man.
Nope, that's all
Taking
right.
one for the team.
Hey, you know what? It's all worth it in the end.
Yes, we appreciate it. So
right.
again, you've got the standard landing gear with the oversized tires. You've got the optional float set, and I'm sure we by the way, we just have an extra set of the landing gear here to kind of hold the skis in place to show you that. You don't get a second set of landing gear. You just mount these to the existing landing gear.
Right.
But then on top of that, we brought also the optional float set. So some of you guys may recognize this set of floats. It's the same set of floats that comes with the original timber and also the turbo timber,
right.
which also are optional floats for the Timber X as well. So these are very, very popular floats. A lot of guys have a set of these already around that they may or may not have used. But all of the same hardware that you use to assemble these, to put them on a timber, you use all of that again. And you guys will see here that you've got these two mounting points here. We have hard points in the fuselage that accept those.
Right.
No modifications are required.
Right.
All you do is assemble the floats just like you'd be putting them on your timber, or maybe you already have them assembled from your timber. And then you take it and you slide it into the slots in the fuselage, use a couple of screws to secure it, and boom, you're ready to go.
Right.
So it's
Super
very,
simple.
very, very simple to install. And then of course you can rig up the water rudders to the rudder that's the setup that's recommended in the manual, and it works very, very well. It is nice having water rudders because when you're trying to taxi on water in a crosswind, if you don't have water rudders, it's really tough. Yeah, usually the airplane weather vanes in the wind and you're kind of stuck.
I foresee a lot of guys getting those and then painting them to match this scheme.
Yeah,
For sure.
so if you guys look at pictures of the full-scale air tractors that are on floats, a lot of times they are painted to match exactly. They have the yellow, and then also a lot of them will have the blue stripes. Of course, some full-scale aircraft that have float options, they'll either have gray or silver or maybe raw aluminum finish floats as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if people do paint them.
Absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely.
But they don't look terrible on there in white. Of course, you see that in our video.
Oh, it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah, but if you painted them to match, hey, if you do that, please send us pictures. We want to see that. We love to see when guys repaint our aircraft. I would not be surprised if we see some people repaint this.
I'd like to see
put some
a Warbird
ordnance on
version.
it. Exactly.
Yeah, I want to see the Warbird
Yeah,
version.
in fact, to be honest, if you're the first person that sends us some pictures, we might be able to do something special for you.
Yeah.
If you're the first person
Jason
to repaint as a
Kramer.
Warbird. Yeah,
already
maybe.
talking in the
Yeah,
chat.
I don't know if he's interested in
He's
that
talking
version,
in the
but-
chat.
Is he? All right. Yeah, so there you go, guys. Maybe
All
the
right.
first person that sends us a picture of one of these repainted as a Warbird with some ordnance on the bottom, I think we can do something special
We
for
might
you.
be able to work with you. We might be able to work with you.
So I did bring, for the heck of it, I brought a fuselage so you guys can see. It's a little bit easier to see because it doesn't have the wings on it. But there's those mounting points that I was talking about for the floats right there, and then right back here. So the wires for the floats, they go right into those slots, no problem. And there's screw holes on the bottom to mount those into place. So it's very, very simple. Also, the nice thing is I can show you here of course, we've got a wing tube, which you can remove for transport. And then you can see down in the pockets there, you've got the hands-free servo connections.
Super handy.
Super easy. You don't have to mess with any wires or anything like that. So if you do take the wing off to transport it, you can see the fuselage is not very big by itself. But if you do have to do that, it's not hard to do at all. You do have a couple of screw holes on the bottom. They mount into these tabs here. They go through the bottom of the wing. You take those two screws out, pop it off. You've got your wing tube. Wing tube, by the way, for those that don't know, this is kind of a quick tip that I'm surprised when I do this at the field, how many guys go, I never thought about that. You got a wing tube that you don't want to lose, you put it in your fuselage. And then you put the hatch back on. So that way you don't ever forget or lose your wing tube. Now, not all fuselages fit all wing tubes, but this is one of those examples where it does, and that's kind of a nice thing to do.
I'm more likely to lose my bind plug.
Oh, yes. Well, hey, that's the nice thing about that 637T receiver is it
Right.
can use a bind plug, but also we now have the option for the bind button that's already on there. So it's
Right.
nice. You don't even have to have a bind plug anymore for that receiver. So I also did bring along the ever popular Turbo Timber 1.5 meter. So you guys can see a little comparison in size here. Very similar class models, guys. Of course, again, same power system, basically the same wingspan, similar length and fuselage, a lot of similarities in the overall class of model. And so almost everybody I know has one of these or has flown one of these or
Right.
has an original Timber or maybe even a Timber X. And so again, guys, the Air Tractor is the perfect low wing alternative to a timber. So if you have a timber and you love it, you need to have one of these. You're going to love it too.
Right.
If you're looking for your first low wing model, this is it. If you're looking for a first scale model, that's it. It handles a lot like a timber with the wing on the bottom. You really can't beat that. It's just a fun to fly, easy to fly, very great flying airplane. You also see in our videos that it's capable of a lot of aerobatics, which of course, hey, we know the real Air Tractor is not out there doing knife edge passes on the deck or inverted flybys or those kind of pop-top maneuvers, but this airplane can do it, guys. It has plenty of power, especially with 4S in particular. It has plenty of control, and the aerodynamics of the airframe actually lend itself pretty darn well to that. And so for someone like me, who I enjoy a good flying airplane, but if it can't do a lot of aerobatics, I might get bored with it very quickly. This airplane is not that. I'm going to be flying this at every event that I go to this year. This is going to probably always be with me, just like the Timber and the Timber X have been with me in the past.
Right.
Because now I've got all of the wonderful flying characteristics of a Timber in something that looks real and actually has even more capability than the Turbo Timber does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And David, just to speak to your question, the skis for this particular aircraft will work for the Turbo Timber and several other aircraft with some minor modifications.
Yes.
So maybe you came in a little late. It does work. Yes.
Yes. So that is a nice touch. So it is something that we do sell the skis right now. By the way, guys, there's 2 item numbers out there. There's an item number that it says it's for the Air Tractor, and there's an item number that says just the 10 to 15 size ski set. They are actually the same set of skis. They ended up that way. Originally, we were going to do 2 different sets of skis, one for this airplane in particular, and then one for other airplanes. We decided to kind of consolidate that. So over time, we'll end up with just the 1 item number, which is kind of the generic set, which again, bolts right on the Air Tractor, no problem. You don't have to buy anything extra or modify it for the Air Tractor. But for some of the other aircraft that you might want to use it on, you may have to at least drill a hole for the screw to hold the string in place, that kind of thing. So yeah.
A really good question. It is kind of a Pawnee. It is an Air Tractor. Some guys want to know if we put a tow hook on it.
So we did not put a tow hook on this particular model. I think aero tow is a cool thing, not super duper common. Some of our bigger aircraft we put the tow hooks on because, or the ability to have a tow line attached to the airplane and to release it in an emergency situation if needed, because there are larger models that can tow relatively large gliders. This airplane has enough power and it's big enough it could probably tow a 3-meter sailplane. I don't think it would tow a lot more than that.
I definitely use 4S.
Yeah,
sure.
And so you could easily rig up a tow mechanism if you wanted to. I don't think that would be any problem to do. Not at all.
Let's talk about price.
Yes. So this is available in 2 versions. Again, the plug-and-play version and the Bind and Fly Basic version. The plug-and-play version is $239.99 US, so $240 US approximately. And then the Bind and Fly Basic version is $30 more. So that is $269.99, so $270 US. Of course, that price varies worldwide, but in the US, those are the prices. They are available for pre-order right now, both of them, both versions. So you can pre-order it today as you guys are seeing this live on Facebook, and then hopefully later today on YouTube. And then about a week from now, they start shipping out in the US.
Very cool.
I will say this, the initial quantity is limited. And obviously with some of the things that are happening overseas right now, there are probably going to be some delays in getting some follow-up shipments. Right. So if you want to get your hands on one of these, so you have it either now to fly, even in the wintertime, or to fly as soon as the weather breaks, you better get one now. Right. Make sure you pre-order today, either on our website, horizonhobby.com, at your favorite local hobby shop, your favorite online retailer. Get that pre-order in, otherwise you may not get your hands on one for a number of months. I do believe that this is going to sell out, and it's going to be very popular and sold out for a while. So some people may remember we recently released the Twin Otter. Sold out, we're chasing that. The SU-30 sold out, we're chasing that. Sometimes airplanes outsell our expectations for a variety of reasons. I'm pretty sure this is gonna fall into that camp. So you can pre-order and you don't have to put any money down usually. Right. Make sure you check with your favorite retailer on that. Of course, on our website, you have to put your order in, you gotta put your credit card in, but you don't get charged until it actually ships.
It is important to note, guys, that reserves your spot as well.
Yes.
So if you get in early, there's a good chance there's a possibility you might get one. So the earlier, the better for sure.
Yes, it kind of, we ship in the order in which the orders are received. So the later you wait, the further down the list you are. And so make sure you get your pre-order in right now if you want to get one. The Bind and Fly and the Plug and Play version will both be available at the same time in limited supply right at that initial shipment. So about a week from now, about middle of February now, 2020, you'll be able to get your hands on one of these in the US, and then not too terribly long after that in Europe and some other regions as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, guys, my laptop did die, so I'm using my phone to monitor your comments here. So I'm not seeing that we have much more, Jason. So guys, if there's any other questions, you can follow up after the video. We'll be here to monitor that for you. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to be here with us.
I'm show them the slotted flaps there. Look really cool, and they work really, really good, guys.
The airplane in general is pretty cool, Jason.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's definitely going to become one of my favorites. And I will say, I've flown a lot of airplanes over the years, and it's hard for me to be impressed and to find a model that I have to add to my stable. Like you, I do have a limited amount of storage space, so I have to be a little bit more picky than I used to be. I used to just almost anything. Even if I didn't absolutely love it, I wanted to have it.
Right.
But nowadays, if I don't absolutely love that airplane, I'm probably not going to have it in my hangar. This one is definitely going to probably have to move another plane out to make room for it, but it's going to be worth it in the end.
See, I'm in a different scenario. If I bring home another airplane, I don't have to move another airplane out. I have to move out.
You have to move
because
out.
my wife's going to kick me out of the house. So that's generally what happens. I'm
going to share this video with her later.
Yeah, well,
and tell her that I sent you home with one.
Okay.
So, all right, guys.
All right, guys. Well, again, we appreciate you being here. Please like, subscribe, and share this video, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.